Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving day with your families, and that this weekend has been one that's been restful and recreative for you. I spent Thanksgiving with my parents and my brother and his family in Bakersfield, and we had a great day, one that I am very grateful for. Time with our families is so important, and the holidays are a great time to get that time in. For many people, the holidays are also fraught with anxiety. The issues within a family can outweigh the good of the time together, and the time can turn into something to survive rather than something to be enjoyed. Now, our families are the people to whom we belong, and so when those relationships are not healthy, when there are old wounds that are not reconciled, the belonging we should feel is challenged and undermined. It's terrible to feel as if one doesn't belong in one's own family, or that our belonging is characterized by negative feelings and painful memories. Belonging is a big theme in our gospel today. The gospel reading is John's account of Jesus' trial. Pilate, the Roman authority, is trying to understand Jesus and what all this is about. He asks Jesus questions, and Jesus responds with more questions. He asks Jesus if he is a king, and Jesus says, "You say that I am." It makes no sense. It must have been very frustrating for Pilate. The stakes were high. It was a matter of life and death. And yet Jesus doesn't come to his own defense. The only thing that he says is that his kingdom is not of this world, and that's why his disciples aren't storming the Praetorium and staging a coup. Then Jesus says that he came into the world to testify to the truth, and that everyone who belongs to the truth hears his voice. Now, this is where our gospel reading stops, and that's too bad, because in the very next verse, there's an important question from Pilate, a question that I have, and I bet you have as well. Pilate asked Jesus, "What is truth?" Of course, Pilate wants to know what this truth is that Jesus has come to testify to, and that certain people belong to. What is truth? There are lots of ways to understand truth. We have truth as fact, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Truth that is relative and personal. Take the election, for example. You may be pleased or displeased with the results. This is still truth. It's your truth. Then there is absolute truth. Truth such as the earth being round and the chemical formula for water being H2O. But I don't think any of these are the truth that Jesus is speaking about. What is truth? Truth is something really big, something that we can't fully comprehend. It's something spiritual. It's something divine and holy. Something about the revelation of God. Truth as a way for us to come to know God by how God shows up in our lives. I think this truth is the heart of the gospel, the essential message of love and grace for everyone, every single person. It's easy to see this truth with those that are like us, with those people that are easy to love. It's much harder when someone is different than us or more difficult to love. Now, the challenging differences in Jesus' day were Jew and Greek, slave and free, male and female, and I'm quoting from Galatians there, from Paul's letter to the Galatians. But what about in our day? What are our challenging differences? How about Jew and Palestinian, Muslim, Jew, and Christian? Gender wars, male and female, gay and straight, Catholic and Protestant, evangelical and liturgical, and my favorite, Republican and Democrat. I could go on and on. We are so good at identifying ourselves, getting caught up in this personal identity, who I am in this great big world in which I live, that we forget that we really all are one. We all live under the same sky. And the one God we profess our faith in is the God of everyone, not just Christians, not just people who believe like us. God is much bigger than any one religion. God is much bigger than even Jesus, as Jesus hints at when he talks about being born to testify to the truth. He was born to show us the way, to live this God way, so that we may know the way to God. And the way to God is not by finding things that separate us one from another, but rather to know ourselves as belonging to God, and knowing that our Muslim neighbor belongs to God too, or our gay neighbor, or our Republican or Democrat neighbor, or whatever kind of difficult neighbor we have. The way to God is not found in qualitative judgments of identities, whether these identities are self or other defined. The way to God is found in looking for what is holy and good in another person, seeking the love of God in the other, and seeking that same love of God in ourselves. Today is the last Sunday in the season of Pentecost, so next Sunday we begin Advent, the start of our church year, and we call this Sunday Christ the King. The notion of kings and kingdoms, of a royal rule over a people, is not only far away from our experience in the U.S. I mean, we just celebrated a holiday that's all about coming to America and having our freedom from English rule. It's a stretch for us to understand the power of the claim that Christ is king. It's literally a foreign concept. But claiming Christ as our king is not a claim for kingship as we know from a human perspective. It's a claim for a kingship that is of God. When Christ is our king, we belong to a kingdom of justice and peace and mercy, a place where grace is shared and given away freely, not held on to, where every human being is given dignity and respect for simply being one of God's beloved children. When Christ is our king, we belong to a kingdom where love knows no limits. When Christ is our king, we belong. We may not always feel like we belong in our families, but when Christ is our king, we belong. We belong to truth, we belong to love, we belong to each other. We belong to God. All of us, no exceptions. And that's the gospel truth.